Tonight, I'll be sharing 3 chilling stories from people who worked security night shifts, parking garages, empty offices, and abandoned hospitals. Places you think would be silent, safe. But for these guards, the night was anything but quiet. These are 3 scary true security guard horror stories. I used to work security at a multi-level parking garage in Dallas. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep me afloat while I was finishing school. The shifts were mostly uneventful. My duties were simple: keep an eye on the cameras, do hourly patrols of each floor, and make sure no one was sleeping in their cars or breaking into vehicles. The garage itself was 5 stories tall, attached to an office tower. During the day it was packed, suits rushing in and out, horns echoing, tires screeching as people fought for spaces. But at night it was the complete opposite: empty, silent, and echoing. I worked the graveyard shift, midnight to 8 a.m. The first few weeks I didn't mind it. I liked the quiet. I'd bring coffee, sit in the security office watching the cameras, maybe step outside for fresh air when things got too dull. The most exciting things I dealt with were drunk people wandering in, or the occasional homeless guy trying to find shelter. But then there was the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, around 2 in the morning. I remember it clearly because it was one of those bone-tired nights where even caffeine wasn't helping. I was half dozing in front of the monitor wall when one of the motion detectors lit up on the screen. Level 3. The camera feed showed a lone sedan parked near the center of the floor. Its headlights were on, bright and blinding on the grainy feed. That struck me as odd. People sometimes left their dome lights on, but I'd never seen someone leave their full headlights running at that hour. I radioed into the second guard, but he was on break outside. So I grabbed my flashlight and decided to check it out myself. When the elevator doors opened onto the 3rd floor, I immediately noticed how wrong the atmosphere felt. Usually the garage was dead silent at night, the kind of silence that almost presses against your ears. But this time there was a faint humming in the air, the kind of sound electricity makes when it's being pushed too hard. The sedan sat halfway down the row, its headlights blindingly bright. But as I approached, something strange happened. The lights flickered and went out. I froze, shining my flashlight directly into the windshield. The driver's seat was empty. No movement inside. No keys on the dashboard. I circled the car. The doors were all locked. Everything about it screamed normal, except for the fact that seconds ago the lights had been on and now they weren't. As I was crouched near the driver's side trying to peer inside, I heard it. Footsteps, slow, heavy, echoing, across the concrete. They were coming from the far end of the garage. I whipped my flashlight in that direction. Nothing, just rows of cars in the dim glow of overhead lamps. "Hello?" I called out, my voice bouncing back at me. The footsteps didn't answer. They just stopped. That was almost worse than hearing them. I stood up, suddenly aware of how open I was, how alone I felt in that massive concrete cavern. The silence returned, heavier than before. I started walking back toward the elevator, telling myself it was just echoes. Maybe another car settling. Maybe I was tired and hearing things. But then behind me, the headlights of the sedan blazed back on. And this time, both front doors were wide open. I ran. I won't lie and say I calmly investigated. I sprinted for the elevator and jammed the button like my life depended on it. My flashlight beam shook wildly across the walls as I glanced back. That's when I saw him. At the far end of the garage, just beyond the reach of the light, stood a man. Tall, wearing a hooded sweatshirt. His face was in shadow, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't move. He just stood there staring. The elevator finally opened and I dove inside, slamming the close button. The last thing I saw before the door shut was that hooded figure, still standing perfectly still, facing me. When I got back to the security office, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the radio. I called the police, told them someone had broken into the garage. 2 patrol cars showed up within minutes. I led them to level 3, but when we got there, the sedan was gone. Not just moved, gone completely. The cops asked if I was sure I'd seen a car. I swore up and down that I had, even described the make and model. But they checked the logs at the entrance and exit, and no vehicles had passed through since midnight. They searched the entire garage. No hooded man. No footprints. Nothing. The officers eventually left, clearly thinking I was just jumpy or overtired. but I knew what I saw. And it wasn't just in my head. Over the next week, things only got worse. Every night around 2 or 3 a.m., the cameras would glitch. Always on level 3. The feed would distort static black lines, sometimes the whole screen freezing. And whenever I went to check, the place would feel wrong, colder than the other levels. One night I heard a car horn blaring. When I checked the monitors, I saw a car flashing its lights wildly. By the time I reached the spot, the car was completely dark and silent. No sign of life. Another time, during a patrol, I found a single wet footprint on the concrete. Barefoot. Human. But it led nowhere. Just one print in the middle of the floor. And sometimes, when I stood still, I could hear faint breathing behind me. I lasted 2 more weeks before I quit. But on my final night, the worst thing happened. It was nearly 3 a.m. I was alone in the office, staring at the monitors, when every single feed from level 3 cut to static at once. Then slowly, the picture came back, but the cameras were all pointed at the same thing. Me. Somehow, the angles had shifted, and every camera on level 3 showed me sitting there in the security office. Watching, my blood ran cold. I knew those cameras couldn't move on their own. And then, in the bottom corner of the feed, I saw him, the hooded man, standing in the garage staring directly at the nearest camera. Except this time, he smiled. I don't remember much after that. I must have blacked out because the next thing I knew it was morning, sunlight streaming through the office window. The cameras were normal again. No sign of the man. I didn't wait for explanations. I handed in my resignation that day. Months later, out of curiosity, I asked a friend who still worked there if anything weird had happened since I left. He said not really. Except one thing. Sometimes around 2 or 3 in the morning, the headlights of a car on level 3 will switch on by themselves. And when guards go to check, there's never a car parked there at all. I've worked other security jobs since then, but I'll never forget that garage. And I'll never forget the man in the hood. Because in the back of my mind, I know he wasn't just some trespasser. He was waiting for me. I worked overnight security at a corporate office building downtown. It was one of those glass and steel towers you see in every city. 12 floors, sleek lobby, endless cubicles upstairs. By day, it was buzzing with life. By night, it was a ghost town. There were usually 2 guards on duty during the graveyard shift. I handled the lobby while my partner Marcus patrolled the upper floors. We'd check in with each other over radios every hour, sometimes more if something seemed off. Most nights, nothing happened. I'd sit at the front desk, watch the monitors, and sip coffee to stay awake. But there's something about empty office buildings at night that unsettles me. It's not like a home or a store. It's designed for people, but stripped of them. The hum of the air conditioning, the flicker of motion lights, the creak of vents, all of it makes you feel like the place is alive, but hiding it. And on one particular night, I found out what was really hiding there. It started around 1:30 in the morning. My radio crackled. Marcus's voice came through, barely above a whisper. "You hearing this?" I frowned. Hearing what? Typing. Like, someone's working up here. I glanced at the monitors. Each floor had a handful of cameras, but most only showed hallways and elevators. Cubicles weren't covered, so if someone was actually inside working, we wouldn't see them unless we checked in person. "Which floor?" I asked. 10. I sighed, grabbed my flashlight, and told him to wait for me. Together, we took the elevator up. When the doors slid open, the floor was bathed in a pale bluish glow from computer monitors left on standby. The office stretched out in rows of identical cubicles, partitions reaching just high enough to block the view unless you stepped inside. And sure enough, there it was. Click, clack, click, click. The unmistakable sound of typing on a keyboard. We followed it to the far side of the floor. A single computer screen was lit, its desktop filled with spreadsheets. The keyboard rattled with furious speed, except the chair was empty. The typing stopped the moment we reached the cubicle. Marcus and I just stood there staring at the glowing screen. Then the monitor flickered off. Complete silence. We exchanged uneasy looks. Maybe some kind of glitch? Marcus muttered. But his voice didn't sound convinced. We left the cubicle, both of us on edge. An hour later, things got worse. I was back at the front desk when Marcus came rushing down in the elevator, pale as a ghost. "You need to come see this," he said. We went back up to the 10th floor. He led me into the sea of cubicles, his flashlight beam darting nervously. At first, I didn't hear anything, just the low drone of ventilation. Then, one desk phone started ringing, then another, then another. Within seconds, the entire floor was alive with sound, dozens of desk phones shrieking in perfect unison. The noise was overwhelming, bouncing off the walls, drilling into my skull. Marcus and I just stood frozen in the middle of it, not knowing what to do. And then, just as suddenly as it started, every phone went dead. The silence afterward was somehow worse than the noise. We bolted back to the elevator, neither of us speaking until the doors closed. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. Marcus just shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm not going back up there." The next night I tried to convince myself it was stress, that maybe the phones glitched or we'd misheard the typing, but when you work security, ignoring things isn't an option. Marcus refused to patrol the 10th floor, so I volunteered. Part of me wanted proof, something to tell myself I wasn't crazy. Around 2 a.m. I rode the elevator up alone. The doors opened and the air felt different, stale, heavy. I stepped out into the dimly lit office. Click, click, clack. The typing was back. I followed the sound, my flashlight trembling, the same cubicle as before. The monitor was glowing, spreadsheets open. This time, though, I didn't rush in. I stood at the edge watching. The keys moved on their own. Slowly, deliberately. The letters spelled out a word. Every hair on my body stood up. I staggered backward, and that's when I heard it. The elevator doors behind me sliding open, but I hadn't called the elevator. I turned, and my stomach dropped. Standing inside was a figure, human-shaped but wrong. Its proportions were off, too long, too thin. Its face blurred like static on an old TV. It stepped forward into the light of my flashlight, and in the blink of an eye, the floor went black. Every monitor, every emergency light, even my flashlight, it all shut off. I was swallowed in pitch darkness. The typing stopped. The only thing I could hear was breathing. Not mine, something else's. I don't remember running. I just remember the elevator door opening again, light flooding in and me sprinting inside. When I hit the lobby, I collapsed against the front desk, gasping. Marcus stared at me, horrified. What happened? I couldn't even answer. All I could do was shake my head. We finished the shift together in silence. Neither of us went near the 10th floor again. I lasted one more week at that job before quitting. Marcus quit the day after me. The strange part? Months later, I ran into one of the day guards. I casually asked if he'd ever heard weird stories about the 10th floor. He gave me a strange look and said, "That floor hasn't been used in years. The company downsized. It's been completely empty since 2017. I asked about the computers, the phones. He shrugged. They're not even connected. No power, no lines. It's dead space, I didn't argue. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And every now and then when I'm alone at night, I swear I can still hear it. The steady, rhythmic sound of fingers typing on keys that shouldn't be moving." A few years ago, I picked up a temporary security job at an abandoned hospital on the edge of town. The city had closed it down nearly a decade earlier and sold the property to a development company. My job was simple: guard the building overnight until the construction crews came in the morning. It sounded easy enough. No patients, no staff, no one to bother me. Just a paycheck for sitting in an empty building. But I didn't realize how much the place would get under my skin. The building was massive, with 6 floors and a basement. By day, you could almost ignore how decayed it was. But at night, it was something else entirely. The walls were peeling, paint curling like old skin, windows were cracked, letting in cold drafts that carried the stench of mold. And the silence. The silence in that place wasn't normal. It was the kind of silence that pressed on your chest, made you feel like you were being watched even when you weren't. My office was set up in the old reception area. A desk, a folding chair, and a radio connected to the property manager. That was it. I did rounds every hour. Just me, a flashlight, and endless hallways of rotting hospital rooms. The first 2 nights were uneventful. Creepy, yes, but nothing unusual. A few raccoons, the sound of pipes groaning. Easy stuff. But on the third night, things changed. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard it. At first, I thought it was the wind, a faint wailing sound, distant and muffled. But as I sat up and listened, it grew clearer. It was crying. A child. The sound was coming from the pediatrics wing on the 3rd floor. I grabbed my flashlight, telling myself it had to be trespassers. Kids daring each other to sneak inside, maybe. The pediatrics hallway was colder than the rest of the building. My breath came out in mist as I walked, the beam of my flashlight shaking against the pale green walls. The crying grew louder with every step, echoing down the corridor. It led me to one of the patient rooms. The door was half open and inside was a single rusted bed frame. Restraints dangled from the rails. The crying stopped the moment I stepped in. I swung my flashlight around, my pulse pounding. The room was empty. Then, slam. The door shut behind me with such force that dust rained from the ceiling. I bolted back, yanking the handle. It opened easily, swinging wide into the empty hallway. No one there. But the crying had moved farther down the hall. I didn't follow it. I went straight back to my desk, locked the door, and tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. But I knew better. The next night, I checked the pediatrics wing early. Nothing. No sound, no movement. I almost thought I'd imagined the whole thing until I looked at the monitors. One of the portable cameras we had set up showed a live feed of the 3rd floor. And on that grainy black and white screen, I saw movement. A small figure, maybe 3 feet tall, crawling across the hallway floor. I leaned closer, heart pounding. The figure moved slowly, unnaturally, dragging itself on hands and knees. Then it stopped, directly under the camera, and tilted its head upward, as if staring straight at me through the lens. The feed glitched, static filling the screen. When the picture returned, the hallway was empty. By the 5th night, I was barely holding it together. But I needed the paycheck, so I pushed on. That night, during my patrol, I heard something new. Whispers, coming from the basement. I told myself not to go. But part of me felt like I had to. Like if I ignored it, it would only get worse. The basement stairs creaked under my weight. The air grew damp, heavy with the stink of mildew. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing rusted wheelchairs, collapsed gurneys, and old filing cabinets. The whispers grew louder. Dozens of voices overlapping, too fast to understand. I followed the sound to a locked door at the end of the hall. And then, clear as day, a child's voice spoke from behind it. "Come play with me." I dropped my flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, casting wild shadows on the walls. When I picked it up again, the door was wide open, the room beyond was empty. On my last night, something happened that I can't explain, something that still keeps me awake. It was just after 3 a.m. I was making my way through the 4th floor when all the lights flickered on at once. The building hadn't had power in years, but now every fluorescent bulb buzzed to life, flooding the halls with harsh white light. For a moment, I thought maybe the construction company had reconnected the grid early. Then I heard it. Laughter. Children's laughter. Echoing down the halls. I turned a corner and froze. Every room I passed was filled with children. Dozens of them. Sitting on beds, standing in doorways, peering through cracked windows, but they weren't alive. Their skin was pale gray. Their eyes black and hollow. Some had IV lines still taped to their arms. Others clutched stuffed animals with missing eyes. They all stared at me. Smiling, I stumbled backward, heart racing until my back hit the wall. The laughter rose into a deafening chorus, echoing all around me. I shut my eyes, praying it was a dream. When I opened them again, the hall was empty. The lights were off. Darkness swallowed everything. I ran that night. I didn't finish my shift. I didn't lock up. I just left. The next morning, I told the property manager I couldn't do it anymore. He didn't even look surprised. Just sighed and said, "Most guards don't last more than a week there." I asked him why. He wouldn't answer. The hospital was torn down a year later. Sometimes I drive past the empty lot where it used to stand. It's just a patch of dirt now, fenced off and forgotten. But every time I pass it late at night, I swear I hear it again. That faint, distant sound of a child crying. And I know whatever was in that hospital didn't leave with the building. Thanks for watching. Which of these 3 stories chilled you the most? Drop your answer in the comments and tell us your own night shift encounters. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more true horror stories every week. Stay safe, if you can.